You know, my mom taught me when I was like a young kid to see something beautiful about everybody. Pick one nice thing that you like about people and focus on that. If you don't know someone or you feel uncomfortable, just find one nice thing you like about someone and focus on that for a while. And so that's very much a part of my portrait style. And I think it's why people are attracted to it. It doesn't matter if people are classically beautiful or not. I make beautiful portraits of all sorts of people. There's something about everybody that really speaks to me. I have an easy time like finding beauty in people. And so I think that comes from my childhood and just my kind of positive, optimistic nature imbued to me by my mother back in the day, you know?
Dear friends, it's Kurt Derdix, and welcome back. If this is your first time listening, I am so glad you found us. This week, I'm excited to share my conversation with my friend Kris Krug. Kris is a well-known professional photographer, having taken photographs with presidents, supermodels, rock stars, billionaires, and cultural protagonists like you and me. Kris also is a technologist and an author exploring artificial intelligence. He's US born, but based in Vancouver, British Columbia. And this conversation covers lots of ground. And one of the highlights is us unpacking his photography process. We get technical. We also discuss language and how he chooses to rescript the violent language associated with photography for a more intimate and profound approach, which I really appreciated, and I hope you will too. And Kris and I have lived a lot of life together, spent a lot of time in Baja, Mexico surfing, and he's one of my favorite people, and I'm delighted to have him onto the program today. So without further ado, here's Kris. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, without further ado, it is my profound privilege and pleasure to introduce to some of you, most of you know this guy, Kris Krug. You're a legend, buddy. It's so good to see you.
What's up, man? It's a big, wide internet out there, Curdy D. It's not as if most of them know me.
Oh, man. Well, I am one of the chosen ones then, because you and I have this really auspicious, multi-dimensional weave. I think kind of just thinking about how we met and a lot of the life we've lived. It's interesting. I met you first through Baron Miller, who I think you grew up with in Sacramento. And Baron and I were doing...
Yeah, man. Baron Miller and I played trumpet in the band together. He was the first trumpet. I was the second trumpet, and he was a little older than me, so I always looked up to that guy. And he had a mean Kareem Abdul-Jabbar style hook shot on the basketball team.
Well, yeah, he is a tall dude too. So Baron, he's one of my most favorite humans. He's in Nashville now doing marketing stuff. He's so good at that. And Baron, we love you. And then I remember I was always doing City Source. Baron's like, yeah, you got to meet my buddy Kris Krug. And then I remember we got on a phone call, and then I think we met somewhere. And then
I was working for Esri.
Well, I know, but I think I felt like we had met before that. But I remember I had just gotten off the main stage at the Esri Partner Conference in 2011, and it was a big deal. I got to sort of do a featured talk, and I came off the stage, and there you were with a camera, and you got some amazing photos of me. But more importantly, I was blown away that you were there, and we ended up having this most amazing time. And we ended up going to Baja, Mexico on a bunch of trips. You know, we did that for years. Donald Preston, who was your homie.
Another guy that I grew up with, an awesome friend from my childhood. Yeah.
So, I mean, was that really the first time that we had met at the Esri thing, or I feel like we had met prior?
Well, I don't think we met face to face prior, because I remember knowing of you and having been introduced, but then you were doing City Source at the Esri UC, and I was documenting it, and I actually stalked you during your what do you call it? Not dress rehearsal, but mic check or whatever. You know, they do those TED style talks there. I think they had you in the round, like in this kind of like floating stage in the middle of the audience there or whatever. And I had figured out that if I came at that time, I could track you down and bend your ear for a little while. So
yeah, that was epic. That was a very memorable moment.
What a cool company Esri has been. You know, like, talk about one company I can say almost anywhere in the world in people's eyes, like, oh, really? You work with Esri, huh? Like, that's
Yeah.
It's a pretty awesome company that a lot of people have never heard of, you know?
Yeah, I just got the chills.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you did a bunch of work at TechCrunch. I mean, there was a period of like 2011 to 2015 that you and I were bumping into each other in a professional context, and then there was a lot of sort of hashtag business and pleasure. We were doing.
Yeah. Well, we've got that overlapping connection with Anima and the Connect.com crew. They were trying to build that really cool social graph app back in the day, you know, and the Esri stuff and the City Source stuff and our love for Pacific Ocean waves.
Yeah, we have some incredible mutuals on LinkedIn too. Some of these people have been on my pod: Robert Scoble, Andrew Warner, Kelly Stetzel from TED, Frank Gruber, just some like that whole class of folks.
Did you see Scoble's big news this week, man?
No, what was it?
Oh, dude. So Scoble's been talking about launching his new show called Unaligned.
Okay,
and he launched
I saw a new show come up, but I didn't.
Yeah, well, he put out his first episode of his new show, and it's actually really good. His first guest was epic. It's this guy from the AI music space. But the big news is, day one, Elon Musk retweeted Robert Scoble, and he got 30 million views on his show on the first day.
Amazing.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, the Robert Scoble interview on my pod is incredible because he basically he got me too'd, and he ended up getting sober. And my show was the first show he came and talked about that. And my first episode of my podcast is my dad, who I helped get sober in college, and so Robert and I sort of bonded over that experience. I'm such a fan of Robert, and you know, what he did was really wrong, but I also believe in even the context of my dad that, you know, it's everybody deserves a shot at redemption.
Yeah, that was a very interesting time. You know, I was in friendship with him kind of when he was going through that, and it was a time where I was also friends with a couple other people who were quite publicly going through it, even a former business partner of mine. And man, what a hard time for me to figure out how to hold my friends accountable, but also to be supportive, and where that line is between loving someone who's fucked up and, you know, holding space for redemption, and then also being like, yo, unacceptable type behavior.
Yeah.
Update your programming. Not okay. And so, yeah, man, way to like speak right to the heart of the matter. Very interesting time, you know? Well,
for the context of Robert, there had been quite a bit of water under the bridge in time. And I had sort of, I treaded lightly, and we had, we ended up having, I think, 2 conversations in advance of that for me to feel comfortable that I felt like he really was like, you know, walking the talk. And so,
yeah.
Yeah, my dad, you know, he's been sober. He came onto the show, episode 1, and he had just celebrated his 21st sober birthday. And I was able to joke that his sober birthday was old enough to drink. And that we both had a laugh about it. And the fact that like we were able to laugh about it speaks to the beautiful healing that can happen with time. And I think that's another thing that you and I both have sort of in common. And I don't know how much we want to get into it, but we're both sort of I think we would both, I identify with, I don't know if you would identify with this term, but we're both ex-evangelicals. I was.
Yeah, I mean, I call myself a recovering Christian. Hey, before you move on from the other stuff, though, you know, I've been on my own little sobriety journey over the last couple of years, redefining my relationship with alcohol specifically. And I'm not currently sober, but I am pretty proud that I have changed my relationship with booze. It had gotten to the point where I was drinking and out of habit, and not being an angry drunk or anything like that, but, you know, dropping some balls and not bringing out the best side of myself, and doing it, you know, out of habit a little bit. And so, yeah, I took 2 years and didn't drink, started therapy, doing some meditation. I started working out, actually. Once I stopped drinking, my body changed quite a bit. And I found that, you know, just putting in the smallest amount of effort yielded pretty awesome for me results, you know, and stuff. So, yeah. And now, you know, I the whole time I was, being sober and doing all this work, I was looking forward to a day when maybe I could have a more healthy relationship with alcohol again. And I feel like I'm getting close to that point, And so, anyway, that's been a big part of what's on my mind.
There's so much we can cover. When we first started hanging out, I was sober. I was sober for 3 years during City Source because I came out of a great financial crisis in '08 and I got completely wiped out. And I sort of started hiding in the bottle. And that was very scary and unhealthy. And, talked to my dad who was doing AA and sort of like got involved in that community for 3 years. And it was amazing. It was actually the church that I wish I had always been a part of, in the context of like, there was a real accountability. Let me say there was a lot of humility, everybody's like admitting they're, have a problem. And there's this like flat hierarchy. There's sort of an absence of power structure and all that.
I mean, yeah, I guess it is like the alcoholic's version of everybody's a sinner, except you take a little bit more personal responsibility for your own sins in that case. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's like, look like, and if somebody sins or whatever, to use that term, you sort of have the incentive of getting that chip. Like my dad, he's like on his 23rd year chip, and those are like big deals,
Oh yeah, but you fuck it up. Well, you start over and you start counting again. No sense in beating yourself up or whatever, that type of thing. So
yeah. Well, let's do this. I don't know. I mean, like, should we like? Why don't we do this? Maybe we come back to this.
No, we can go the recovering Christian direction or whatever you like, brother.
No. Here, yeah, we I think we can come back to it. But I think the thing that I want to give the audience some context. You a world-class photographer. One of the best photographers I've ever seen, and you have a real gift. Maybe catch the audience up a little bit about some of the work you've done, and then we could talk a little bit about the COVID thing, which is really wild for you. You have such a unique story.
Yeah, it's true, man.
Kind of get into some of this other stuff.
Hey, I've got a really unique photography career. I was one of the first users of Flickr. Stuart Butterfield started it back here in Flickr in 2003, and I was on board right from the very beginning. I had a 2-letter username, KK, and I still do. But, I published over 100,000 Creative Commons licensed photos in high resolution on Flickr. And as that thing blew up, essentially the first ever social media network, I blew up along with it. A photograph of my son was the main homepage cover photo, linked down into my profile. And I really quickly amassed a huge following on Flickr and a huge, means of distribution. And so I started talking to other artists and creatives about how we could use social media tools to find our voice, build an audience, get ourselves out there, and essentially like live our dreams or whatever, And this is at an early time when photographers were feeling really like scared and nervous and like, pulling up the drawbridge. Like if I stick my photos on the internet, they'll be stolen and they'll be of less value. And why would anyone hire me if all my stuff's just online for free? And, that was like the kind of common wisdom of the time. And we found that actually the opposite is true, that like the more you put yourself out there, the more you give yourself away, the more value there is in your work and in your name, the more people want you involved in their stuff. And so I kind of discovered that paradox pretty early on and got to ride it out. So that got me working for all sorts of people. I used the Creative Commons license to give away my work to people who didn't have money, like students and nonprofits and artists and other people, while retaining the commercial rights to sell my work to other people. And so, I have worked for National Geographic and Rolling Stone magazine. I've worked for Esri and for Microsoft. I've photographed everything from like New York Fashion Week, Paris Fashion Week, Kane, Conti, and Lime bikes and scooters back in the day sent me around the world to build them a stock photography archives of all the cities they were launching scooters and mobility bikes and stuff in. And so, I photographed Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and Mikhail Gorbachev and Shaquille O'Neal and Michael Stipe from REM. I don't know, man. Like, it's a long list, Kobe Bryant and, like just really a who's who of the last 20 years. And my photos have appeared pretty much everywhere. It's been a wild ride.
That's incredible, and I had some context, but that's a lot deeper and broader resume than I was even aware of, which is no surprise. And for context,
well, one of the blessings and the curses is I've never had a portfolio. I've never curated my work into like here's my best 8 or 12 images and here's what you should think about them. It's been like, you know, people are sometimes they're like, hey, I like your work. And I'm like, yo, what have you even seen? Because through Flickr via Google, there's 150,000 on-ramps into my work. And I never really know which one you took to get there or whatever and stuff. And so, you know, it's beautiful in that there's a lot of ways and exposure in the world to my stuff, but it's also unique in that, you know, since the beginning of photography, people would usually curate their best 20 images into a very linear experience of viewing an artist's work. And they would tell you exactly what to think about each one and stuff. But
yeah,
that style's never really worked for me.
Couple fun facts. Flickr, when we were at City Source, we had an incredible CTO, Dr. Alan Day, who was, he's now at the top at Google doing a lot of their developer evangelist stuff. Brilliant. And he built a mechanism to scrape any photos of potholes or vegetation and stuff on Flickr, and got the geotags. And that was one of the ways that we were able to push a lot of content into the system and show.
It's amazing.
Sales. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It was brilliant. It actually helped me in the sales process because we didn't have a lot of content. And we were able to show cities like, hey, there's stuff that we found online, you know, and so, and yeah, so there's more to that story. But then Stuart Butterfield, what a legend. He had Flickr. He also did Slack.
Yeah.
I think you guys are buds, right?
Yep. He used to live here in Vancouver and we got to know one another during the Flickr days. And then he had a little, downtime after that. He was building his cool, his game. He keeps, has this track record of building these games and then breaking off one piece of the functionality of that game and then making that his product. So, you know, Flickr used to be game never ending and they broke off the photo sharing function of that and became Flickr. And then I forgot what the name of Slack was, but I used to play that game before it was Slack.
Oh, that's so brilliant. I was just listening. Rick Rubin has this podcast that's, I'm just loving, and he just had Ian Rogers on it, who did Apple Music and did band. What was it? He did Winamp back in the day, MP3.
Dude,
he had a. Do you know Ian?
I don't know. No.
Yeah, and Ian had done this business called Topspin that was pretty high profile, but they tried to build everything into one platform. They tried to do like, you name it, the kitchen sink, all into, you know, Ticketmaster and Patreon and everything you could need. And that was his big insight, is that he should have just taken the Stuart Butterfield approach and just built a real simple feature set instead of trying to boil the ocean. I think even back to your portfolio a bit, where they have so much content. I mean, even I had my last episode I just published was with Frank Gruber, and, you know,
yeah, man, that was a good one.
Prolific content creator, and just talking about just how do you focus, you know, and how do you edit? I mean, I think that's probably a great segue into your, you know, because the tagline of the show is unique perspectives shaping the world, and you, through a visual media, have a unique eye, all the pun intended, to this kind of this context. And so I think, when you approach a subject, I'm sure people ask you, like, what's your process and stuff like that, but how do you think about it? How do you get ready for
Dude, I'm so glad you asked me, because I think I have some things that are pretty unique about my point of view that I've never really been able to share with people. And so I don't know, I'll just kind of like riff on it a little bit and we can go from there. But one is, like, you know, my mom taught me when I was like a young kid to see something beautiful about everybody. Pick one nice thing that you like about people and focus on that. If you don't know someone or you feel uncomfortable, just find one nice thing you like about someone and focus on that for a while. And so that's very much a part of my portrait style. And I think it's why people are attracted to it. It doesn't matter if people are classically beautiful or not. I make beautiful portraits of all sorts of people. There's something about everybody that really speaks to me. I have an easy time like finding beauty in people. And so I think that comes from my childhood and just my kind of positive, optimistic nature imbued to me by my mother back in the day, you know? Another thing is I don't really think of photos. There's some words I don't like when it comes to photography. I don't like talking about taking photos. I like to talk about making photos.
I love that distinction.
Because making photos is a co-creation process between you and I. You know, you have to consent, obviously. And if you do more than consent, if you play along, we're going to get a lot better results, you know, and stuff if we work together and stuff. And so taking photos kind of elevates the photographer above the subject and creates a kind of distinction I don't like. I guess I would fall into the more gonzo style of photographer in some ways. You know, there's some photographers, you go to their website and it'll say right there on their website, they're going to wear all black and they're going to be a fly on the wall. And they're gonna, show you that the perspective, from a neutral observer standpoint or something like that. Where I've always been much more of like a mix-up kind of guy, get in the middle of things and be a part of the story. You know, when I was photographing for TED Talks and the TED conference all those years, the reason they hired me was I was like, yo, I will walk the walk of an attendee and show you exactly what an attendee sees. When people view my photos, it'll feel like they were there or whatever and stuff. And so, yeah, I'm often right in the middle of the dance floor with my camera in one hand and, a beverage in the other or something and mixing it up. And that's kind of my style. And the other thing is I really try.
So a fair label would be participatory or something like that?
Yeah, something like that, just kind of breaking down those walls. I think it makes it a little bit more authentic. I like taking honest portraits of people, which, sometimes they're smiling, sometimes they're not, but it truly kind of shows a bit of their spirit and stuff.
So I in that context, like you've gotten such good candid photos of me. There's one where I was at TechCrunch talking to somebody that came by the booth and it just was like, it's one of my favorite photos. You're really good at capturing the essence of people. And I think back to the beauty bit, like, I was just curious, like beauty, do you think at the end of the day, beauty is that a feeling? Is that a feeling that we get, beauty? Like, what is beauty?
Yeah, man. It's a really interesting question. You think it's a feeling, huh?
I wonder. I mean, it's because I wonder if it's something that you see something beautiful. I mean, like working at Esri all those years, one of the things I got really in tune with was just the interplay between the eye and the mind and the heart. And Jack Dangerman always talks about this thing about be above the line. Jack is the CEO of Esri, founder, for folks catching up. And it's this whole trip about living above the line is context and below the line is content. And the content and the below the line is that stimulus response. And oftentimes it's the survival instinct and it's the getting caught in the glue. And then above the line is the imagination, the creativity. And there's probably some Buddhism to it in the context of like Eckhart Tolle in that classic book talks about you watching the thinker. You could watch the thoughts and observe the thoughts or feel the feeler, and you sort of have like this this kind of a separation where you're able to feel the feelings, but you're able to also like have a conversation with those feelings. The same thing with the thoughts, and in the context of Esri, and it's another thing I learned about with my mentor Duke Stump is this idea of see, feel, change. And we used to talk a lot about this at Esri, where if the map helps you see something, that seeing gives you a feeling of what to do next, or an intuition, and then that feeling gives you the courage or the discipline or the charge or the drive to go do some action. So I think in trying to peel back the question about beauty and a feeling, I wonder.
Yeah, I mean sorry.
No, yeah, go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Well, when it comes to beauty, as I see it, I think that I often walk away from an encounter with beauty feeling inspired or kind of like called to a greater part of myself to kind of like step it up. I think that's often how I encounter beauty. So I feel it as like a call to kind of like be my best self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. For me, I've had just like candidly growing up, I had these funny little ears. I used to have a really bad speech impediment. I had to do so much speech therapy. And in 08, 07, I got my hearing, and that really helped me out. And I used to be very self-conscious. I used to think I was really ugly. I used to, like I would be very vain. And as I've gotten older and, you kind of, you start to maybe, in my case, I some things I was able to resolve and kind of work through. Other things, you just sort of like let it go. How do you, as a photographer, do you get a sense about people's sort of self-image? I'm sure you do. Like probably.
Oh man, the psychology of self that is revealed by being a photographer who makes portraits with people is really incredible. And I've definitely noticed some, phenomenons over the years. One being that if I show you photos I made of you today, if I show you them tomorrow, you'll look at them with much different eyes than if I show them to you a month from now. And so
what's the pattern there?
There's an interesting fine line to walk between showing people things very quickly so they can feel like, yeah, we got it, a sense of accomplishment or whatever, but then also giving it a little bit of time to sit before you show it to them. And this is people, I would say, in particular, who are a little bit, image conscious, or like have some self-doubt around their looks, or really just trying to put their best foot forward or whatever. If I show you photos of you tomorrow that I made today, you may look at like the bags under your eyes and comment something like, oh, I should have slept better that night. Or you may look at your hair and like be like, yo, I was having a bad or good hair day or something like that. Or the types of things that you notice or comment on are these kind of more incremental differences, like around your eyes or your hair or things like that, or maybe your outfit or something like that. But if I let those things sit for a month or 3 months or something like that, and I bring them back to you, then you're much more likely to respond to it from an emotional place and to remember like what you were thinking or feeling that day, or like what was on your mind, and to, instead of pick yourself apart and objectify your own self, I think I've noticed that people are a lot more likely to look at themselves as a cohesive whole, and to be more generous with themselves around nitpicking looks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
This idea of giving space in the context of time gives a better kind of a more a wider perspective.
I do not know what it is specifically. It says if we use a completely different measuring stick for measuring a photo a month after it's taken than the day after it's taken. Is very interesting.
And we're talking about like your insights, beauty one, this framework around the participatory too. There's more that I want to get into, but
I got another one for you that's really important.
Real quick though, if we double click a little bit more into beauty, like asymmetry is like a pretty classical sense of beauty, right?
Oh yeah, but I mean, I don't really understand that one very in depth. I mean, there's also asymmetry as well, right? And that creates motion and unbalance and leads a viewer's eye through an image and stuff. And so it's almost like, I feel like symmetry is kind of easy. And I went there first in my career trying to make mandalas and reflective mirror images and things of that nature, and stuff. But I'm much more interested in asymmetrical forms right now, and unbalanced things, and things in which, they're still or movement or they're still or fixed, but yet there's motion or movement carried through them. Those things are very interesting to me right now.
So let's move on. Like, okay, so talk about beauty.
Let me just think let me just hold for 1 sec. Let me think for just 1 sec.
Yeah.
If there is anything that I want to say on this topic, all right. I think you've experienced too, man, that beauty is a very interesting combination of what lies inside somebody and what lies outside them as well. And I think that the kind of like unique way that a person carries that blend with them, their personality and their appearance, really comes to define who they are and like our experiences with them and stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of attractive people in the world, but you know, hey, as we enter into this AI age, I wonder what our response to beauty is how it's going to change, because like, you know, these computers can make perfection all day long, you know, and stuff. And so it's like, I already see a youthful response to the perfect images of this day and age is like, all the 16-year-olds I know post blurry, out of focus, weird things that look like they were taken on film cameras from the 80s or whatever, even though they have like some of the best digital technology known to man in the palm of their hands. So how we respond to all the perfection and beauty and images over the coming little while with the AI revolution is going to be very interesting.
Yeah. One other sort of bit, and then we move on, because I'm just so fascinated with this, is fashion in the context of beauty, or, you know, attractiveness, or that sort of thing. Like, you even look at you, like, you have this really interesting look. It's so unique. But these fashions change. And that was one of the other things that I learned working for Jack and Scott at Esri, was they made a big distinction between fashion and infrastructure in the context of business at large. And that there were certain businesses that are fashionable, that would sort of go in and out of style. And this is much broader than fashion. This is fashion with a capital F. And then there's some businesses that are infrastructure core. But this idea of self-expression seems to be something where we all want to be sort of unique, but we also want to fit in too. So any thoughts about fashion in the context of beauty?
Well, I mean, the ways that people express themselves through fashion is more interesting than ever, man. And like, and I think that a lot of it comes directly from internet culture in some ways. I think that's kind of why we're seeing face tattoos as trendy as they are. I think it's directly because, like, look what's on the screen right now, you know, and if I want to set myself apart from the guy right next to me in selfies or Snapchat or TikTok, you know, a bunch of tattoos across my face is a sure way to do that. So, you know, I was just thinking yesterday too, a little bit about fashion. It's like, as time moves forward, you can remix anything that's gone before, but, you know, we keep marching on as well. So it's like, when I was a kid, I had, you know, a certain amount of years of modern fashion to choose from. But now, you know, kids that are younger than me have all that time plus another 40 years on top of that. So they can remix all the old shit I could remix when I was a kid, plus all the new things that had never been thought of before at the time. I was thinking that's like a pretty flexible front. They got like more Legos in their kit to build shit out of, you know. And
that's it. I love the remix framework.
Yeah.
All right, so we've done a pretty good deep dive on beauty. I think the participatory bit was really insightful. What else around your process is unique to you, or how you approach it?
I think language is really important, man. And I've always, you know, I love people that teach me new words. I love vocabulary and words and language. I think if I could do it all over again, I might study linguistics. And I've always tried to use my relationship with language and English to kind of like change the world around me. And so one thing that I've noticed is there is a lot of war metaphors in photography, and I don't use them. You've used the word capture a few times in this one. I don't like it. I don't capture people. I don't capture souls. I don't do that. I reflect. I reflect your beauty. I reflect what I see, or something like that. Co-create, document maybe, but you know, and like shoot has never exactly even really like resonated with me, because like you do point it up to your eye and pull a trigger, and I don't shoot people.
This is hilarious.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so obvious now that you say it, but like, yeah, you take, capture, shoot.
Yeah, it's not for me, man. So I just look for every chance I can to assess those things out and turn them on their head.
Oh my gosh, that is powerful and profound. You know, wow,
it has been for me.
Yeah, I need to get that little like an atomic bomb sound effect, so that when I get like these little mind things, like, so let's factor that into the show here. Let's just do a.
In this particular example, I don't know if an atomic bomb would be appropriate. We're avoiding the war.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we double down on the metaphor, you know.
Yeah.
Blowing up all assumptions.
How about like Nickelodeon? You get slimed.
Yeah, slime. I like that. That's good. What other sound effects would be fun?
Sad trombone for other things.
Oh yeah, sad trombone. Yeah, that's good. Like, give me two more.
I have no idea. Slipping on a banana peel.
There we go. Look at this.
And how about
genius.
How about a swing? Or are you saying mucho leche or something like that?
Yeah, mucho leche. That's funny. Kris and I were in
Cállate.
One of my favorite memories was you were in Ensenada, you and I, and it was with Donald, probably like 2014. And then we ended up having lunch somewhere, and these guys, a mariachi band, and they had like a full brass. Usually mariachi,
that's right, man.
A string, you know, they don't have, maybe they have a tuba, like one tuba maybe, but they had the whole thing. They had the trumpets and the whole bit, and yeah.
And I borrowed that guy's trumpet.
Because you did play trumpet for a bit, you and Baron. There we go. Yeah, that's what it was.
I got my horn right here, man. I still play.
You know what? That's another one. I want to get like the spaghetti western trumpet sounds.
Yeah.
All right, you guys heard it first. It was the KK interview where Curdy D started bringing in the sound effects like live, because I do have this little sampler. I have 8 little buttons I can press here for sounds. I never use them. So I was listening to Zane Lowe interview, or I love him. He's does Apple Music. He uses sound effects on his pod. I said, that's so clever. I'm going to copy that. So. But I think this is all part of the creative process. Like, I think that's a good segue. Who do you copy and borrow from? What are photographers that you're like, oh man, I want to, like, you know, that's my jam. I love that. I want to absorb that.
Well, I just got to spend a week with Asa Mathit at the Dent conference. He's a San Francisco and Hawaii based conference and portrait photographer, and the guy's amazing, man. He's super inspiring. I love the way he works with people. He makes beautiful images, and I essentially got to sit at his feet guru style and watch him edit in Lightroom, watch him work with lots of different subjects. I respect him technically and creatively. I like the way he runs his business. It was really cool. And, you know, we've been orbiting each other and working on the same projects or for similar clients for, you know, more than a decade, and we know each other online, but I actually got to rub shoulders with him, and it was really awesome.
Good. Anybody else come to mind? Just real quick. You don't have to give the whole context, but some names that you're doing.
You know, this podcast I'm super inspired by on video blog right now is Matt Wolf. You know this guy?
No.
I think his thing's called Cool Tools, and he just goes by his name, but he's doing these AI reviews and stuff and all these like creative technology reviews, music, video, photos. But he's got a really fancy editor or something like that who edits a lot of these AI tools into the video with him on there and stuff. So I love his editing style. He's super insightful, very inspired by Matt Wolf these days.
Yeah.
I got one more for you too, dude. Another person I met at Dent that's had me very inspired since I left is Malibu Baby. She's like the hottest music producer in LA right now. She just like won a VMA with Nicki Minaj for that remake of Rick James's song, Very Freaky Girl. And she just did some stuff with Megan Thee Stallion, and she just remixed some of Shania Twain's songs. And she got under the hood of her Pro Tools and like showed me exactly what she's been doing in there, all her like 100 layers of audio tracks and the way that she actually, you know, like, I mean, I know what a music producer does, but I've never actually seen underneath the hood of their Pro Tools of them making a modern pop hit. And that was pretty epic, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to get into the AI stuff that you're doing because it's so kind of relevant and transformative. But real quick, if you're comfortable sharing, I'd love to just do a real quick kind of sequence of a photographer's career, and in the context of like, I just got an SLR mirrorless camera. It's just sitting in my closet. I have some photographers, friends locally, and love to go hang out with them and learn a little bit about how to use a camera. But it's kind of camera 101. If somebody wants to get into photography and using SLR, what are the core things they need to learn first?
Like, I do get a lot of questions, as you can imagine, about, like, what camera should I buy, or, like, what lens should I buy and stuff. camera gear is expensive.
Yeah.
I tell people to buy the same camera system that their friends have and to swap gear amongst yourselves. That's always what's worked for me, you know. Like, I'm on Canon because the guy who I learned photography from was on Canon, and he was keen to let me borrow his gear, and then I kind of paid that forward by sharing mine with other people and stuff. And so Canon and Nikon, they flip back and forth over the years. Sony pulled ahead for a while in the mirrorless game at the beginning, but now Canon's back in the lead. And so anyway, I don't really get too into that. I think that whatever brand you choose is fine, and they're very, very comparable. They have the same lenses in different categories, all that kind of stuff. So I say pick something and stick with it. But another kind of counterintuitive thing I tell people is take your budget, divide it in half, and buy one nice lens that is the nicest lens you can possibly afford. And then whatever budget you have left, buy whatever camera you can get with that money. I've had some of the same lenses that I bought. I bought the best L series glass when I started, 1x1, and I've been using them for 25 years.
Wow.
I've had 5 or 7 camera bodies during that time, but some of the same lenses. You know, these are like German glass grinding techniques. They don't change that much. They don't change like megapixels or focal points, or, you know, shutter speeds, or a lot of the other things that the bells and whistles that they sell you digital cameras on and stuff. So yeah, I say it's more important to invest in awesome lenses than a sweet camera. In fact, you could spend 80% of your budget on the best lens and 20% on an older school fucking digital camera, and you'll still take better photos than your peers.
Yeah. And then once you get that camera, what are the first lessons, like top first, you know, 1, 2, 3, like things to learn? Is like the f-stop, or what?
Sure. I mean, if you actually want some technical photo stuff, understanding that triangle between shutter speed, f-stop, and ISO is essential. You know, ISO is essentially, in the olden days, what was film speed. Either you were running 400 speed film or 100 speed film. And 400 speed is faster. You can shoot in lower light, and 100 speed is slower. You need more light. So there is a proportional relationship between these three things. And so understanding that relationship is really important. And a couple other like tips and tricks. So there's a shutter speed rule of thumb, which is like your shutter speed should always be 1 over the focal length of your lens. So if you're using a 50mm lens, you don't want to shoot any slower than 1/50th of a second. Whereas if you're shooting a 35mm lens, you can shoot 1/35th of a second. But if you've got a long zoomy zoom lens, 400mm, you're going to need to shoot at a faster shutter speed, no slower than 1/400th of a second. And that'll prevent you from getting blur, from, you know, it being jostled or zoomed or whatever and stuff like that.
And have you just been doing it so long that you don't even need to do the math anymore? It's just intuitive?
Dude, one of my pieces of advice is make photos every day, share them online every day in a place where you can get feedback on them, and then incorporate that feedback by the time tomorrow that you go out and make photos again. And I believe that that's part of what's allowed me to become a master really early in my life. I think in the olden days, you know, if you think about shooting for National Geographic, like a photographer would have done 30 years ago versus me shooting for National Geographic like I did, the process is completely different. An old photographer would have gone somewhere with film, made film. If they were on a long trip, they would have been sending film back home to a photo editor as they were away. Or they may keep the film with them and return back with it and develop it when they get there. At that point, you know, they begin the process of developing it and working with an art director to get it into publication. Then it gets printed, mailed places. Eventually somebody reads it, and then maybe they write like a letter to the editor or a letter to you saying like, oh, the covers of the Pharaohs issue of National Geographic was really exceptional this year, except I didn't like the lighting, you know, whatever, give you some feedback. So that might take 6 months or more if you ever get any feedback.
It'd be so expensive too.
Oh yeah, man. And now, like, I mean, I had like 10,000 followers on Flickr, and they were giving me feedback every single day on the photos I made that day. And I was able, like, pro photographers, teachers, inventors of digital cameras, all sorts of perspectives, you know, and like, I was able to get real-time feedback from the whole wide world on stuff. And then I was headed right back out into the field again tomorrow, and I could make more photos thinking of the things I had learned. And so I think that I would highly encourage that. If you want to accelerate your growth as a photographer, get out there, make stuff, get it online, read the comments, incorporate it into your work.
Yeah, I love that. I've been able to go to Kelly Slater Surf Ranch 10 times in 2 years, which is kind of insane because it's, you know, that's like it to be able to go once is a lifetime thing.
Yeah.
And I'm getting pretty good at riding tubes. I didn't think I'd be getting good at riding tubes in my 40s. And it's because you got the coach on the jet ski being like, hey, here it comes, duck. And then you got they're videoing it. After the session, you go in and you're watching the video and the coach is actually moving your body.
Yo, if your audience hasn't seen you do this yet, they should go check it out. Like I just watched one for the first time on your channel like a month ago, and I don't know how they do it. It looks like there's a train track along the shore or something.
It's a train track. Yeah. Yeah. It's insane.
And they pull a train through the water, which makes a perpetually breaking pipeline wave.
Yeah, it's a big foil. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah. And it's a 7-foot perfect tube that's 500 yards, and it takes a minute to go from, you know, top to bottom.
Talk about accelerating your progression as a master surfer.
I know. Well, this is the insight. It's being able to get that feedback loop in next to real time, because, you know, I'm able to go and bring so many friends, and I'm like,
and then you can just go back to the beginning of the pipe and do another one. You don't have to wait for.
Well, it's in a controlled environment too, because in nature, the wave is always dynamic, but here the wave is the same. So you could work on the one little bit, and it's a controlled experiment. And
it's always there when you want it.
Yeah, it's insane. So, I think the thing about the Flickr thing that's so interesting, how would somebody, I guess people could do that now, because, you know, maybe Flickr's not.
I mean, we got lots of places to still do that. I mean,
people go do that.
I mean, some people are doing that on Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, it essentially has all the same features of what I just told you. It just doesn't have some of the like high resolution Creative Commons and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But then there's all sorts of, you know, forums. Flickr is still full of photographers where they're doing that. There's all the stock photography sites that exist out there where people are doing the same kind of thing. And I mean, the whole, like, you know, like, think of all the Discord forums where AI artists and photographers are hanging out. It's like the most interesting things on the internet are happening under the surface.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great segue into AI and kind of the emerging future. And in the context of surfing, it's kind of a bit of a corny analogy, but, you know, riding the wave there is a wave element to this stuff. And these things do come in waves. I'm a pretty active investor, and I've been making a lot of investments into AI stocks lately and over the last bit.
What kind of companies are you interested in?
I mean, the obvious ones, the chip makers like NVIDIA and AMD, but I'm also invested in Supermicro, and there's another one called AEHR Systems. There's about 6 or 7 that I've been investing in. And my bet is it's going to back to the wave, that it's going to be even a bigger wave than mobile. And mobile brought us, you know, Facebook and Apple, and, you know, like a lot of the big FANG stocks or Magnificent Seven are beneficiaries of mobile. And I don't know. I mean, the AI stuff for me has been interesting. We're starting this new fund we just launched, and like we have a big vision for it. And there's a blockchain component to it, and I was able to use the GPT to like, hey, you know, show me, generate, you know, tell me all the different types of tokens that there are. Example, like security token, stable token. Give me the characteristics of each of the token. Give me examples of the top 5 tokens for each class and what are the market cap, and then print it into a spreadsheet. Boom, there it is. I look at the data. This is, you know what, you know, and then I add this component as a new column when, you know, and then boom, it would add it, and it was like having a 6-figure analyst on demand for free in near real time.
Yeah,
and I'm getting so smart on this stuff, and my productivity is going through the roof. My partner's like, "Holy smokes, dude! Like, how do you do this?"
Yeah.
you know, and finally I told him, oh, I'm using GPT. He's like, dude, this is.
You're really well equipped to take advantage of this because you're one of the early guys on the whole like virtual assistant revolution thing. I noticed too. Like you've been doing a good job of focusing yourself on the high value tasks of thinking, creativity, and strategy for a long time.
Yeah, that's definitely yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I think having said that, talk to us about what do you see as exciting and possible with AI, and how are you approaching it, and what are you learning, and what are you excited about?
Sure. Well, let's start with what I'm grateful for. At the beginning of the pandemic, you know, I got home from a trip to Africa 1 week before travel got shut down. And I had been a perpetual motion machine leading up to the pandemic. I had been on the road for more or less 10 years. I had a place in Vancouver and a place on Galliano Island, and I was never at neither of them. I was always out and about. And I came home, and a week later, things shut down. And that was a big deal to me because I was a traveling photographer, and most of my money comes from the the line item called event photographer in somebody's budget. Yeah. You know, I bring a lot more to the table in terms of community engagement and social media and stuff, but it's photography that ends up paying my bills. And so, you know, as you and everyone remembers, there was no flying anywhere. There was no meeting up or leaving your house. There was no face-to-face. And so I gave up my Vancouver apartment. I hunkered down onto Galliano Island where I rented a huge greenhouse. I bought some ducks and some sheep and some goats, and I became a freaking farmer for 3 years, man. I grew my own food. I raised those animals. I grew some ganja, and I just had a time. I got to flex my muscles doing all the stuff that I had wanted to do when I had been too busy to do it.
I just wanted to say Vancouver Island and those archipelago of islands are just stunning.
Yeah.
And through COVID, watching you as you were sharing some of that stuff I was really happy for you, even though I knew it was probably challenging.
It was so interesting, man. Like population 900 on my island. So already it's quiet. There's no stores. There's no street lights. There's no stoplights. Already it's quiet at the best of times. But it was really quiet during the pandemic. And then, you know, there was this weird tension, which is, you know, we were under the same restrictions and lockdowns as everybody else in the world, but we didn't have any COVID. The first COVID case happened 14 months after the actual shutdown. And it never really ended up getting very bad at all. So that was kind of an interesting one because we had to kind of jump through the same hoops and do some of the same theatrics that everybody else had to do. But there's very little risk in our particular case. So that was an interesting one. But anyway, just a long way of saying I had become inert when it came to my career. I had no career for those couple of years. You know, I was legit a farmer. Yeah. and I loved it. But you know, last year, and I I shouldn't say I was inert. I also learned filmmaking. I partnered up with a woman on Hornby Island called Jophine Sheehy, and we worked for the Hornby Island Arts Council. We got a huge grant, and we made 10 documentaries, 10 15-minute documentaries about artists on Hornby Island. And I've done short form video and one take video, but I had never done, and I've done like cameraman work on other people's feature length films, but I had never been like an assistant director on a film project. And that was epic. So, but long way of saying, it was AI last year, me stumbling upon Midjourney that kind of roused me from my slumber and got me flexing those kind of geek muscles again, got me staying up late and waking up early to mess around with the tools and ultimately putting myself back out there. It was kind of accidental in lots of ways. I went to go learn Midjourney, and I noticed that it was on Discord. And when I went to their Discord, it was fucking chaos. There was, you know, just, I didn't know any of these people. I didn't know what the heck was going on. There was images flying left and right everywhere. And I had been recovering from a devastating hack in 2017, where I got brought to my knees digitally by a malicious fucking actor. So anyway, I was a little bit nervous to put myself out there in the Discord space in public all the way, not really knowing my security arrangement, you know, at the time or whatever. So I started my own Discord server. I installed the Midjourney bot there and some other kind of bots, and I started and I invited a couple of my friends to it, and I started messing around on my own server with Midjourney, kind of in semi-public or whatever.
What is Midjourney?
Midjourney is a text to image generation tool. It's a lot like OpenAI's DALL-E, but and it's a lot like the more open, like Stable Diffusion. But I'd say at the moment it's the industry standard for text to image generation. Put in some words via prompt, get back some amazing images.
My wife is a world-class designer, mostly doing software design, and but she loves to do branding and also graphics. And she put together some stuff for work, and she did some text to image, and she's like, basically create astronauts holding surfboards on the moon. And it was the coolest imagery, and she did it in like no time at all. She loves this stuff because it just helps her to like pump out more stuff.
Man, it's hard to wrap your head around how significant the changes are. I was at a conference this week called the Frontier Summit, where they're examining kind of future technologies. And I met a woman there who's the art director for an online furniture retailer. So they sell only furniture, only online. So one of their main businesses generating photography about those products to represent those products online. They don't have a showroom. They don't got retail. The only things their customers ever see are the photographs they make in-house of their products. And to do that, they've got a team of 12 in their photo studio, 4 photographers, 4 stylists, and some set decoration people, and then some photo editors and stuff like that. She told me they have decided to move to a 100% AI photography studio, effective immediately.
Wow.
So
what does that mean?
Well, if it means these photographers are lucky they've got a sweet employer, because they reached out to the federal government to get some retraining, some like technology displacement retraining dollars, but they're retraining their photographers and photo stylists and photo editors as CGI 3D modelers, as AI prompt engineers, as fucking data scientists. And they're essentially going to create photorealistic assets of all of their products in the future and do all generative photography going forward.
That's incredible.
I knew this was coming someday in the future. It's easy to conceive of it making this profound of change, but this has happened already right now.
But in the context of gender, and this is getting into why in Hollywood here in LA, why all the strikes are happening. It sounds like they're getting some resolution, and I think what it was that I don't know all the details to it, but AI was a big part of it, and that they basically the film and entertainment industry through the unions are prohibited from using AI unless the creators opt into it.
Yeah. Well,
I guess in the context of that story that you just told, does that mean that, like, is this stuff going to be photorealistic? And you're
absolutely, it's photorealistic today, Curdy. It's photorealistic right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be photorealistic, and it's going to be controllable. Like, they'll be able to control, like, let's say they build a room that is a 3D modeled virtual room of an apartment in Vancouver, and their customers really like that, or they identify with it. They can just keep modeling that room throughout time or whatever. Some of the original image generative stuff, you'd type in an astronaut on the moon, and every single time you'd get a different astronaut. And if you loved one of your astronauts, you could never get him to come back. You couldn't get that same astronaut to come back on Mars or on Jupiter.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that's changing. Is
so how does a workflow start? Doing this an idea of the office furniture? Do they take real photos to start as a base layer, and then they build up from that, or how does a customer get the actual product that is the actual product that is delivered to them, and have it be the same thing as what was marketed?
I believe it's that they're going to be making 3D models of all those things now, and they're going to use that as one of the generative capabilities inside this model that they're training.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Pretty crazy.
I mean, in the context of my story about the fun and the research and it being productive, I think that's one of the things that I'm really excited about with this emergent technology is productivity and like social media. And I'm studying for my CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst. It's like,
Yeah.
It's pretty like wonky investor shit. And the productivity bit, as I think about it, like social media, like I was looking at my social media stats on my phone. I spend an hour a day on Instagram. I just found this out this week. I had no idea I spent that much time. I'm like, holy smokes. I got to stop looking at Instagram. They do such a good job of just getting me like on there and coming back. And I'm like, no wonder I'm behind on my studies because I'm like looking at the IG so much.
AI got me off Instagram, man. I can hardly move my thumb like this 2 times anymore without bouncing straight over to my Discord to learn something new instead.
Yeah.
That's the thing I'm the most stoked about is like the learning. Dude, I have been a technically competent designer and UX guy for my whole life, but I legit can say now I'm flexing developer technical chops. I've used the advanced code analyzer, or it's called advanced data analysis. It used to be called code analyzer inside GPT, dude. I went to a hackathon in New York a month ago and I wrote a OpenAI ChatGPT powered AI chatbot for the transportation sector where you can literally be like, what time is the next bus coming? And it uses the GPS data on your phone with open data sets provided by the transportation in New York there, and to return exactly, you know, what you're asking for and stuff. And dude, I had to set up a virtual environment on my phone or on my computer. I had to download and install a bunch of, you know, libraries via terminal. I had to write the application in Python. Then I had to choose some mobile serving technology, and I chose one, and I did some development using GPT in it, but I chose the wrong one because when I went to ask somebody for help, they're like, oh shit, you're going to be stuck for a long time. That's a very hard language to debug. I think you should switch it over to React Native instead. Then it's in JavaScript. I'll be able to help you out. So I was able to, in like a fraction of the time I had spent debugging the other code, essentially port the whole mobile app part of this application that I had written this weekend into another framework and then deploy it. I use GPT to document it, to write all the software documentation for the app that I had developed.
Yep.
And then I use it to teach me how to use GitHub to commit all my code to the open source repository and stuff. So it's like, I've written probably like 5 small software app, maybe even more than that, applications in the last 6 months. A little web scraper that scrapes email addresses off my computer, you know, all sorts of stuff, man. I've been really messing around, and my technical chops have just grown exponentially in the last 6 months.
Well, I think that's a great example of the point I was trying to illustrate, where social media was very anti-productive. Just sitting there nasal gazing, not even nasal gazing, because at least with nasal gazing, navel gazing, nasal gazing. That's funny. You know, we're just like, you know, it's like that Neil Postman book, Entertaining Ourselves to Death, or Amusing Ourselves to Death.
Oh yeah, but I'm not gonna like pat myself on the back, because all I do is I bounce over to AI, and then instead I generate my face on like 1,000 futuristic freaking cyberpunks or whatever. So I'm still jerking off over there, and nasal gaving over there as well too, but in a different way.
But I think I think this idea of like learning new stuff and pushing yourself and being able to be more productive. I don't know. I am a productivity geek.
It's amazing how much one person can do now.
Yes.
Like, I've always avoided editing audio and video like the plague, because, you know, for every 1 minute of edited video you see, there's literally like 10 hours trapped in a dark room of doing proper video editing that took place to show you that 1 minute. And that's always freaked me out. But with these new AI tools and stuff, man, I can actually edit audio and video and still have a life.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm looking at the clock, and there's like we're well over time, and there's still so much I want to cover. I think this maybe is a conversation we should have a part 2 on.
Sounds great, man.
Yeah,
I look forward to any chance I can to spend time with you.
Yeah, and it is a great way to reconnect. And man, I guess it's just crazy. We had COVID. And then, you know, there was, I'm trying to think when the last time I saw you was.
Well, I mean, you mentioned earlier, but there was a few years where we were pretty in lockstep, you know, we got to know each other and things were slow for a while, but then, you know, there was a while where I was seeing you all the time between the different projects.
Like a 5-year span, like from 2011 to 2011 to 2016.
Yeah, man, you stole my best friend.
Donaldo. Tell the audience that story when you guys got super lit and then jumped over the fire.
Oh man. I don't know. No, hey, young boys do crazy things. So it started with we decided to drive from San Diego to Cabo San Lucas and back on essentially like, you know, some of the worst roads known to mankind.
And some of the most desolate geography in North America too.
Yeah, we were chasing waves. Donald's expert stand-up paddleboarder, and I was an aspiring surfer and stand-up paddleboarder as well. And we decided to get out of Dodge during the time between Christmas and New Year's and head on down to the tip of Baja California. And we just met a really cool guy. Actually, you know, our connections at Warner Brother Records hooked us up with a friend down there near Cabo San Lucas who owned like 1,000-acre freaking, you know, ranch or whatever. And so we were just, you know, living the fancy life with him and his boys. I think he had some teenage sons, and we had a big New Year's bonfire, and they began, you know, jumping over it or whatever, and kind of
drinking little tequila and
being ridiculous. Right? Yeah. And I don't know. I just remember Donald, you know, like me and him, we used to snowboard together. And one thing I remember about when we used to snowboard together is like when I pulled the camera out, the video camera out, that guy would go bigger than I'd ever seen him go before. So it was like something about that moment of when everybody's watching that really just made him take it to the next level or whatever. And so I don't know, it was his turn. He ran to go jump over the fire. I think he went the long way instead of the short way or whatever, and he wasn't quite going to make it. So he decided to do like a duck and roll, ninja styles. And, you know, I think he hit a little bit harder than he thought.
So did he just break something?
Yeah,
it?
Broke his collarbone, separated his shoulder.
Oh my gosh.
Sucked because it was a surfing and stand-up trip, you know, and like that's a very painful injury. You know, you essentially have to like, you know, strap your arm to yourself until you can...
and then you guys had to drive back, and every little bump on those Baja roads is excruciating pain.
Yeah, those washed out arroyos that take out almost every road. It was crazy, man. But
oh my gosh. Because I've gone down to Baja with Donald so many times, and we would always meet people down there, and I'd always get him to tell that story, and you know, a few tequilas in, and he was always told it better and better every time.
I'd like to get his updated version of that story. That's for sure. I mean, it's so fuck, dude. It was a terrible story. I wish you wouldn't have brought it up. You know, like me watching him do it was like, Donald, don't do this. This is a bad idea. Maybe not. And then like, oh fuck, that looked like it hurt. And like, yeah.
I had Paige Craig on my show a couple episodes ago, and we were skiing in Tahoe. He invited me to go to his house, and do you know Paige?
No.
Oh, he's a wild man. Like kind of a prolific angel investor, but he was a Marine. Like he dropped out of West Point to become a Marine, and then he went behind enemy lines during the Iraqi war and started selling the United States intelligence, and built this whole company called the Lincoln Group that was a psych warfare thing, and he built it up to 1,000, you know, professional military, and sold the thing and took all that money, and you know, he was the first check at like Postmates and all this crazy stuff. Anyways, we're skiing
unbelievable
in Tahoe, and he was snowboarding, I was skiing, he's cutting people off, and I was like, bro, you can't do that, you're gonna get hurt, you know. Oh, they're in my way. All of a sudden I'm like, you know, I hear this thing, and I look back, and it's like Paige just like going down the mountain. He's like, you know, like 70 yards up from me, and I'm like waiting, he's not getting up, and take my skis off and hoof up there, and he's like, Curdy, I need you to unzip my jacket and make sure that I think I have a compound break. So I had to like unzip and put my hand up. All right, you're good. There's no bone sticking out, and I felt so bad, but he ended up breaking a bunch of bones and stuff, and you know, screwed up the trip, and he ended up healing. You know, it's all good, but like, you know, you got to be careful.
Yeah, man. Yeah. My shoulder injury was a life changer. That's for sure. I can't surf like I want to.
Oh, bummer. Well, you know what? when you come down here, my doctor is world class, Scott Mortensen. We get you some stem cells.
Yeah.
Stuff works.
One rotator cuff and a venti cup of stem cells, please.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Kris, when you come back, we'll dig into the humanizing success bit, because I know we got a lot to talk about there. We could talk more about AI, a lot more to talk about. So
Sure thing, man. I'll be down your way in about a month for the Future in Review conference in Palos Verdes. So maybe we could actually do one live.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, that'd be epic. A little fun fact question though, or two quick questions to close up. If you could have any band, artist, singer, songwriter, rapper, any sort of musical, style like that, and playing any venue in the world, past, present, or future, who would it be and where?
Wow. Any band playing any venue?
Yeah. And here's the thing. I've been asking everybody this question with the hope and the fantasy that maybe one day there's an AI that I can actually deliver back to them, like they're some kind of like augmented virtual reality experience of them seeing this thing.
All right, I'm gonna give a two-part answer. On the big epic side, I think teenage KK would like to go to like the Acropolis in Greece and hear like U2 sing all their hits from my youth. I think I'd really like that. I think they're actually touring in that new.
I got to hear U2 do the Joshua Tree tour at the Rose Bowl. And I had that house out in the Joshua Tree, and me and my investor took mushrooms and went to the show, and it was amazing.
Yeah. I think they just kicked off their tour at that new venue called the Sphere in Vegas, and I've heard that it was something else.
Yeah. I wish you would check that out.
Yeah. But you know what else I'd really love to do? I'd love to get like a super trippy, like Brian Eno ambient set from like the International Space Station or something like that. Oh my God. Like a little cuddle puddle, warm and snuggly zone of Brian Eno inside the space station.
Dude, that Mike, where's the sound for the explosion? Or maybe
pew, 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 pew.
You need to come up with some kind of like well, you know, Brian Eno and Dan Lanois, they have this album that I can't remember the name of it. Let's look it up real quick. Brian Eno.
I'm definitely going to bring my own sound effects for version 2 of this talk.
Great. I love it. Well, let's see here. Let's look real quick. Liza, you could edit this out while I'm looking. Brian Eno, Dan Lanois.
Hey, Liza, does Kurt treat you properly? If not, call 1-800-KrisKrug.com.
Yeah. So Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois produced an album in the kind of early mid 80s called Apollo, Atmospheres and Soundtracks. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's insane. I love that. Well, if people want to get a hold of you online, what's a good channel?
I guess the best way to track me down is at my website, KrisKrug.co, KrisKrug.co. I used to be KrisKrug.com, but that's the only asset I didn't get back in the hack. But you'll find me everywhere. I'm Kris Krug on YouTubes and Instagrams and all the places.
Yeah, at KK still?
Nope.
No. That was part of the hack, huh?
Yeah, man. Actually, yeah. We'll save that for another episode.
All right, we'll stand by. Everybody will be riveted to hear that about the hack and humanizing success on part 2. But Kris Krug, so much respect. I learned a lot from you today and in the past, and I so appreciate you and our friendship, and I can't wait to see you in LA soon.
I love you, brother. Thank you very much.
Thanks again to my friend Kris Krug for being our guest. I'm excited to continue to track Kris's awesome work, and I encourage you to follow along too. I'm at Kurty D on Twitter and Instagram, also Kurt Derricks on LinkedIn. If the content moved you, please do give us a rating or review at any of your favorite podcasting sources. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, it's all good. And until next time, Kurty D loves you. So does Bianca.